Hi, welcome to our latest Conversations with the Candidates. My name is Mari Regalado, and I am a guest moderator on this show. Today, we are delighted to have former Texas Secretary of State Carlos Cascos, who is running for his old seat, Cameron County Jail. Welcome.
Oh, how are you?
Should we address you as Secretary of State or Judge?
Carlos is fine.
Thank you. Let us talk about your upbringing, Carlos. You were born in Matamoros, Mexico. What age were you when you came to the U.S., and what was your upbringing like?
You know, it was my dad was from Mexico City. My mom was from a little farming community known as San Fernando. I was born in Matamoros. I was the only one of my siblings that was born in Matamoros. Came over probably at an approximate age of 4 to 5 years old, and been here ever since, except for my time away as secretary for about 2 years, and my time away at the in college. I went to UT Austin, so I was gone for a number of years, and then decided to come back. The upbringing was, it's hard to speak about it because I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember certain things that most 3 or 4 or 5 year olds may remember. Dirt floors, outdoor bathrooms, having to struggle with my dad would remember telling my mom, I bought a chicken today, and it's got to last us for at least a week. So we were able to. There was really no part of the chicken that we did not eat. But it was when you don't know anything else, that's a good life. And then came over and just went. I didn't speak any English at all when I came over, so I'm still practicing my English. And so me. Hi. And so many folks that are probably watching, this interview may not remember that back then, one was not allowed to speak Spanish on a public school campus, and that was the only language that I knew was Spanish. So I used to get a lot of detention, and a lot of paddling because that was the only language that I knew. So in time, through total immersion, I was able to start speaking English probably around the 2nd or 3rd grade. And this was before there was any bilingual education, any migrant programs. I mean, there was really nothing. It was like a sink or swim type of scenario. But if, for those that are listening to me now, my English is okay. But I was also able to maintain my Spanish. My mother chose never to learn to speak English. She was one of these diehard Mexicans that just didn't want to do it. My dad did, broken English, but he did a fairly good job.
Wow.
And so that was it. Then went on through the public school system, and then I went away to college. I spent about 2 years at Texas Southmost College, and then went on to UT Austin, and then I came back a few years later.
Wow, that's great. How did you become a CPA, and why did you choose this profession?
Well, I thought it was going to be easy, and it wasn't so much easy. My undergraduate degree is in political science. I've always liked government, and I always liked learning and reading about history, whether it was the Civil War, whether it was about World War II, or just the way this country started. I always had an interest in that. The CPA came kind of by accident. I liked staying in Austin so long that after I graduated in 1974, I decided I wanted to stay a couple of more years, and decided, well, what am I going to do? So I started taking accounting and business courses, and that led to eventually sitting and passing the CPA exam back in the early 80s. And so I've been doing this for, I don't know, about 40 some odd years now.
Wow, amazing. You have served on the board of statewide agency in the Texas Department of Public Safety. What was that, and how rewarding was that to you?
Well, that came about because back then I endorsed Governor Perry, and this was in 2002, and I endorsed him. And the irony of it is his new chief of staff is a dear friend, is a good friend. His sister Anna is Senator Cornyn's field director here in Harlingen. Great family. They also grew up on the border. I think they grew up in Carrizo Springs. It was that way. I was the only Democrat in South Texas that endorsed Governor Perry. I think he was running against Tony Sanchez at the time. And I decided that I was a Democrat, conservative Democrat, but I believed at the time and still do to this day that he was the better choice. So I endorsed him, and he didn't promise me anything. We didn't speak about anything. My deal was just to get endorsed, who I believe to be a good man for the position. And then a few months after that, I'd basically he asked me, I want you to serve in state government. What would you like? And I said I really didn't have anything that I thought of. And eventually it transitioned into the Texas Department of Public Safety. And so it started like that, and I remember the chief guy of criminal investigations came down to do obviously a background check. And I remember him speaking to me. He said, I haven't done one of these in so long, but this is fast track. And he asked me, is there anything in your background that would embarrass the governor? And I said, well, it depends on how far back you're going to go. If you go back to high school, junior high, I did a lot of crazy things back then. But he said, okay. So did a background check. We passed. Everything was fine. And from then on, I served for a couple of years, 04, 05, and then most of 06. And then I resigned in 06 to run for county judge.
Locally, you've served for 8 years as a county judge. When you ran, you flipped from being a Democrat to a Republican. Why did you feel it was necessary to do that?
Well, there were several reasons. There wasn't one in particular, but one that stood out. I just didn't believe, and I think we have to look at it in retrospect, that the Democrat Party, much like the Republican Party, is different, whether it's at the local level, at the state level, or at the national level. Some folks like to equate those things that all Democrats here, just like they are at the state level or the national level, much like all Republicans, and they're really not. We're all kind of unique. At the time, I believed that there was no room for me in the Democrat Party. Number one. Number two, a lot of the philosophy that the Democrat Party was embracing then was just not in line with what I believed. And it was another irony was that I've always considered myself a conservative first, a fiscal conservative, and probably a social liberal to a degree. But I believed in fiscal accountability. I believed in low taxes. I believed in limited government. And the local party at the time just wasn't where I believed I was comfortable with.
Right.
So some people may say, well, you switched parties out of convenience. Well, I heard that, and I kind of chuckled because switching parties and going to a county that is 72 to 74% Democrat is not switching for convenience. It was a suicide attack, but I decided to do it. I won in 06, won in 2010, and won in 2014, and I believe that I gave the voting constituency a choice. And I think in time they came to recognize that I am not a hard party line type of elected official with either party, and I've taken a lot of pride in that. I don't believe that neither party has a monopoly on good government. I don't believe that either party has all the answers. There's good in the Republican Party, and there's good in the Democrat Party, and I think that's what maybe appealed, to the independents, to those conservative Democrats. And I probably upset some Republicans, but it was kind of funny. When I was a Democrat, I would be told that I was not Democrat enough. When I became a Republican, I was told by Republicans I wasn't Republican enough. And I just don't know what that means. I think by virtue of looking at the Valley and the way it's kind of going through a political identity, I think more people are thinking when they go vote. You still have your straight ticket voters, and that's going to go away in 2020. I have advocated the elimination of straight ticket voting for at least a decade. I thought it was offensive, to minorities, to especially Hispanics, where they were being told just pull the lever, and don't look at who's running. That was offensive to me, and that was basically telling me that certain folks didn't believe that we could make a good decision as to who to elect. So in 2020, the straight ticket vote goes away, which I think is a good thing for everyone, regardless of what party you are.
You know, you speak of public service. Can you tell me where that passion comes from doing public service for our community? And obviously, you've gone all the way to Austin and Mexico. You've traveled. You know, tell me where that passion comes from.
I don't know. It's something that I never thought about it, but I believe that once one decides to become a public servant / politician, you serve everyone. I mean, I've had people come into this office at the county judge's office when I was a county commissioner. I was a county commissioner for 12 years, and they would come, and there was nobody that I would turn away. You speak to everyone. And I think that is what people recognize, that part of the, I guess part of my best traits, if there is one, is that of accessibility. You got to be accessible to everyone, regardless of their walk of life, regardless of their financial stature, regardless of their party affiliation. People in Cameron County, much like anywhere else in the state, if they have a problem, hopefully no one's asking them, what primary did you vote in last March? Because we serve everyone, regardless. And I've said that time and time again, that I represent Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and vegetarians. It really doesn't matter. We serve everyone. I'm going to upset the meat eaters, but you serve everyone equally and fairly, and I think that's kind of lent to my political success.
Right. There's a friend of ours, a media partner, Mario Munoz of 88 FM radio station, says he would see you on street corners, standing alone on the street corners, engaging with the voters. The old-fashioned campaigning, which is, what they're going back to now. What did you feel? What was so rewarding of doing that?
Well, first, let me say that for anyone that's been in politics and has not stood on a street corner by themselves, it's a very humbling experience. The first intersection that I stood at, and I decided to do it, was the intersection of Sam Houston and Business 77 in San Benito. Why? Because that was what I considered the heart of just a lot of Democrat voters, and I wanted to go into the stomach of the lion. And see, it's easy to go to Treasure Hills and South Padre Island and Laguna Vista, and where you're in your comfort zone. But I wanted to go outside of that simply because I wanted voters to get to see me. Subsequent to those standing on street corner events, I would get called by other people running for office and ask me, "Is it okay if I stand on the street corner like you did?" Sure. I mean, I don't have a patent on it. You can go ahead and do that. And the only thing that I suggested to everyone I had a few people that would call, and I said, the only thing I suggest to you is, do it alone. You don't need an entourage. You don't need a bunch of clowns jumping up and down for you with signs. You need to do it by yourself, so that as people drive by, they focus on you and not on 3, 5, or 10 people that are standing out there, because then you get lost, especially me at my height, right? You kind of get lost in that. So I decided to do it alone. I'm a people person, so it was fun. I enjoyed it.
That's great.
Very humbling.
What are your proudest achievements as a county judge in the 8 years that you served?
Well, I think getting elected 3 times was a pretty proud achievement. Getting elected 3 times as a Republican against some fine opponents that I had at the time. They were selected by the Democrat Party to run, and against me, and they were very challenging. Some more so than others, but nonetheless, that in itself was a pretty proud achievement for me. Whenever, in every race that I've run. And I've run quite a few of them going back to the early 90s. I like being the underdog. I've always been the underdog, and it's good. I like that because I think it's like a horse. Some horses love running from behind and coming from behind. But there's no way that any elected official that sits on a board whether it's school board or whether city council or county commission. Nobody can take credit for anything that's achieved. It's a team effort. It's a group. But I think that one thing, I was able to bring the county back into a fiscally sound position in the 8 years that I was there. And unfortunately, we had to forego raises, not only to employees, but elected officials as well. I never supported raises for elected officials. But for the employees, we had to go through some hard times. There was a number of years where I, in good conscience, could not support a raise. I did not want to raise taxes simply to give employees a raise, and that didn't happen during my tenure. But I think bringing the county back into a solid fiscal position was probably the most single important achievement, and we did it 8 times.
Will you be an underdog this time?
I'm always an underdog. I think it's going to be a little bit tougher this time, simply because the criticism that I believe I'm going to get is going to be, well, he quit county judge, then he quit Secretary of State, and all I've got to say is that I don't believe that I quit anything. When I got offered the position as Secretary of State, I believed it to be a position that would benefit this area by the relationships that I developed, whether it was in state, whether it was in Mexico. I think all of those relationships and bridge building that we did can help Cameron County. When Governor Abbott chose me, I really thought about it. It's not something that I jumped at it and gave him a decision, I'll do it. I really had about 3 or 4 days, I really had to think about it, because a lot of good supporters invested time and money in getting me elected and then to leave. But for the most part, most everyone, wished me well. And they say, it's a good opportunity to get to see what other parts of the state are doing.
You had just won your 3rd term as county judge when you just mentioned that, but I want to go into that. Governor Abbott tapped to be the Texas Secretary of State. The top assignments for a Secretary of State are overseeing the elections in Texas, and during your term, being the border affair liaison and point person for Texas and Mexico. I imagine that was a great honor for you.
It was a great honor. It was a great opportunity. It was a great learning experience. You really don't know how big Texas is until you start to travel it. And people that know me know I don't like to fly. I don't fly. I don't like it. I get antsy, but so I drive everywhere. So in the less than about probably 2 years that I was secretary, I visited over 142 different cities in Texas, went to Mexico 5 times, went to Canada once, and I chose to stay in Texas to learn, meet people, get to know the different communities, the diversity. This state is so diverse. We probably have one of the most diverse cities in the world, that being the area of Harris County, Houston, Texas, in terms of diversity. But it was an honor, and keep in mind that no governor had visited Mexico since 2007. And that was something that I wanted to change. Mexico is Texas's largest trading partner, and I made sure everybody knew that, especially if I'm speaking in Amarillo or Lubbock or Abilene or the Panhandle, I would emphasize that. But what made my job really, really easy was the support that I received, the welcoming that I received in every community that I visited. It didn't matter whether it was an African American community, Asian community, Anglo community. The welcoming that I got everywhere I went was very encouraging. I visited little towns, big towns, towns people had never even heard of, that were yearning for a visit from a statewide official. And that's what I chose to do. During the election, again, I was on the road 5,000 miles in 6 weeks, 7 weeks, visiting, speaking at college campuses, speaking at high schools, encouraging the 2016. I mean, the 2016 election, we had the largest voter turnout, albeit in percentage-wise was about the same, but we had more registered voters than ever before. We had more voters that came out to vote than ever before, and I still believe that we did not do enough. The legislature budgeted about $2.5 to $3 million for voter outreach, and that's not very much money for running a statewide campaign. People running for Congress locally will spend more than that just in a local congressional race. So the funds were limited.
You know, you mentioned all the traveling that you did around the state and the speeches that you gave. This must have given you a pretty good idea of what the Texans, their families, what they needed. And the communities. Can you tell us what you learned from all your traveling?
I was in a little town called Bullard, Texas. Okay. Some of y'all may not have heard of it. It's a small town. They've got a great museum there adjacent to their high school. I was in Lucas, Texas. Again, another little small town just outside of Dallas. Spoke to a high school. And when I would meet with the local officials, you know, they no matter what part of the state one travels in, they have the same challenges that we do in the Valley and in Cameron County. So what's happening in Cameron is, or even the border or South Texas, is not unique just to us. There's certain things that are unique to us, but what we want is not unique. Economic opportunity, job creation, low taxes, healthcare, education. So I started to learn because I would get asked, what is it that companies are looking for? Now keep in mind that part of my role as secretary was trying to unite Texas entrepreneurs with Mexican companies, trying to put them together, trying to do business together. Because that was part of my role, to try to engage. So as I traveled the state, I started looking as to what people were really looking for. And people that never, and I want to give you an example. If, just take South Texas. If we're looking to attract businesses, regardless of the size, who do we send to try to lobby for that? Normally we send city council members, economic development people, and we try to sell. That's what we try to do, try to sell the area. But the biggest players, and this is what I learned, the biggest players in any community is your educational system, your school districts. If I was going to go and try to bring in people, which we did at the state level, I believe that these entrepreneurs, these businesses are looking for several things. Of course, they're looking for infrastructure, make sure they can get to their product, ship out their product. They're looking at low taxes. They want to make sure they're not coming into an area where their tax rate are going to be, you know, something that's unbearable. But now they look at the intangibles, and this is something people don't think about. They look at the quality of the educational system. Because many of these companies going to relocate are going to bring families down. They want to make sure that that school district has programs, protocols, a curriculum. Some of these families may have children with special needs. So they'll make sure of that. The other component that no one thinks about is the accessibility to adequate health care. The medical field. Are there good hospitals? Are there a good diverse number of doctors? Do I have to drive for 3 hours to get good health care? They also look at the issue that no one looks at, and they do not want to talk about, is the stability of local government. They want to make sure that they're dealing with serious elected officials, that they're not dealing with either a dysfunctional commission or school board. Believe it or not, people watch what we're doing. You know, now as we were talking about technology, you know, county meetings are televised, school board meetings, city, they're all televised. They have access to the internet. Anybody that wants to look at Brownsville, McAllen, Harlingen, they can go on the internet and basically see almost any meeting. And we're looked at. And so they're not going to be dealing with a board or a city council that's constantly bickering or fighting or yelling or calling each other names. That is counterproductive. So I've learned that. And those are the 5 elements that I kind of brought up: education, healthcare, infrastructure, low taxes, and stability of local government. Those are all together. You cannot adequately bring somebody in if one of those components is inadequate, especially education and healthcare.
As a Texas point person for Mexico relations, you attended the inauguration of Nuevo León Governor Jaime Rodriguez Calderón, el Bronco. What message were you delivering on your visit to Mexico, and what feedback did you get back?
You know, I believe I was told then that I was the only official from Texas that went to the inaugural. I'm talking about statewide officials, a lot of locals that went. You know, I was the only one that he had a meeting with on Monday. The only meeting he had on Monday was with his cabinet. He was kind enough to initially give me 10 minutes of his time. And the focus of that meeting was to invite him to come to Austin and meet with Governor Abbott and let him know what basically I said, what can we do for you? And I spent almost 45 minutes with him. We just kept talking and talking, and he's a unique individual. But what I mentioned to him, as I mentioned to Cabeza de Vaca, I went to his inaugural as well, the governor of Tamaulipas. I mentioned a couple of things to them, but more principally was, you know, that what Mexico is losing out on right now is tourism, and they're losing out on tourism because of the fear of traveling on their highways. And I asked the governor of Nuevo León that he needed to step up patrols along their highways because a lot of people can't afford to fly their families to Monterrey. Most people that from Texas I would drive. You know, we would all drive. You know, that was a family vacation going to Monterrey, Querétaro, and all. And so a lot of people won't do it. And if you want to take a family of 4, it's $1,000 to fly, to Monterrey or Mexico City. So I suggested that, and basically I believed, and I told him that we needed to, that he needed to do more to. You just can't say that we're partners in verbiage only. You got to show that you're partners. But Texas hasn't done their part. You know, we have not done our part in what we need to do. I've recommended to the leadership in Washington, principally because this is a federal issue, to establish southbound surveillance with K-9 units, additional personnel. And the reason for that is that drug dealers get their cash back. And I've said this before, they don't go to Walmart and get a $5 million money order. That cash goes through our ports of entry. And some of it they catch, most of it they do not. And so I wanted to have every port of entry, at least in Texas, 28 ports of entry, to have K-9 units trained to detect weapons and currency. Why weapons? Because Texas provides over 73% of all illegal weapons going into Mexico. Goes through our ports of entry. So I think we need to do our part, and Mexico has to do their part in terms of maybe northbound surveillance, looking for contraband, looking for illegals trying to cross over illegally through 18-wheelers or whatever it is. So it's if we're partners, then we have to act like true partners.
Since we're on the subject of Mexico, can you tell us what you think of the renegotiations of North American Free Trade Agreement, the NAFTA? What are your hopes?
Well, I hope that they look. This agreement goes back to the 90s. Facebook wasn't around in the 90s. A lot of technology wasn't around in the 90s. Cell phones were just beginning to have an impact. So we have to recognize that a lot of things have changed. Now, Texas benefited from the NAFTA agreement. There's no doubt. But I think President Trump's issue was that not every state benefited. A lot of the northern states suffered. They had industry that closed, especially in the automotive industry. They closed, but we benefited from it. But again, we're looking at it from our perspective. If NAFTA was eliminated, Texas would suffer. So I believe that it does need to be tweaked. It does need to be renegotiated and just come up with modern day solutions for the modern day challenges that we have today.
Governor Cabeza de Vaca is from Tamaulipas is trying to get an auto plant. Can Rio Grande Valley help them with it?
I have not spoken to Cabeza de Vaca since the inaugural. I really don't know what their plan is, but I think that we all talk about the relationship between how dependent the border is on Mexico. Well, Mexico is dependent on our trade as well, and this is not a unilateral impact. This is a bilateral endeavor. I believe that if it's good for northern Mexico, that provides additional resources for them. It employs people. Hopefully, those people that are employed will cross over to our side to buy like they used to. If they want our help, I think we should stand ready, to help them. Much like if we're looking to attract, Mexican businesses, Mexican entrepreneurs to our state, that I would look to Mexico to help us make that, come to fruition.
I understand you know some of the Mexican presidential candidates. Tell us about them.
Well, the first one was Jaime Rodriguez from Nuevo León, also known as El Bronco, and there's a reason they call him that. He's a tough guy. He really is. I got to meet him. I spent some time with him in Austin. We developed a very friendly relationship together. It was something that his election was historic. He told me he spends anywhere from 5 to 8 hours per day at any given hour on Facebook. That's how he got elected. He believes he's a populist, and he's running as independent. As a matter of fact, just recently he sent me his first campaign video, showing him, never mentioning he was running for president, but just a campaign video, and he asked me what I thought, and I said, "Yeah, go for it." What can I tell him, right?
Right.
The other gentleman, also a great guy, Jose Antonio Meade, who when I met him, he was the equivalent to Secretary of State Tillerson. He was the second in command, underneath Peña Nieto. Educated, a lot of education on the U.S. side. His English is very, very fluent. El Bronco's English is non-existent, basically, but fortunately, my Spanish is pretty good, so we were able to get along fairly well. Jose Antonio Meade is running as a PRI candidate, and so you got a couple of people that I've had the opportunity to meet, break bread, and have at least one adult refreshment at the time. With them, and I think they're both good within their own within their own world. I think they're okay.
As Secretary of State, you were also in charge of the border affairs. That role has been changed somewhat for your successor at the Secretary of State. What were you hoping the state of Texas would do to help improve the quality of life of border residents?
That's a complex issue. I will tell you that early on as secretary, and look, and this is without disparaging anyone, okay, but I was born on the border, raised on the border, served on the border. I don't believe that there's anyone in public service right now that is as familiar with the border as I think I am. We have a lot of people making decisions about the border that have never been to the border. As I prefaced a few minutes ago, the last governor that went to Mexico was Perry in 2007. Nobody since then. I laud Governor Abbott for going in 2015. That was his first international trip. We met with Peña Nieto. We spoke very candidly. Well, the governor did. I just stayed quiet. But the governor spoke very candidly about the relationship with Texas. You can't have it both ways. You cannot, in one side, amplify the importance of Mexico, not only to Texas but to the nation, and then at the same time trying to implement policies that kind of send out a different message. But if you're talking about the border, let's talk about the border. I got a little bit of conflict. I never spoke to the governor directly about it, but I did speak to his staff. We have over 2,200 colonias between Brownsville and El Paso. Estimated over 400,000 people that live on the border in colonias. And this may not sound very good to some of my my Republican supporters and colleagues, but it is what it is. And I believe that Texas needs to come up. And I'm saying Texas, not Cameron County, not Hidalgo, not El Paso. Texas needs to come up with a comprehensive plan as to how, we are going to address the living conditions along the border. And it's not a very popular thing to talk about because it is going to be costly to the tune of maybe, $1 to $1.5 billion. But I think if Texas comes up with a realistic plan of adding, I know that there's already funds that are being distributed through different agencies to do housing and things, but it's not enough. I mean, it's just not going to be enough. Texas needs to make a commitment on top of what they're already spending of another, even if it's $50 million a year for the next 20 years, $100 million for the next 10 to 12 years, but come up with a long-range comprehensive plan as to how we're going to address. It's almost like talking about coming up with a comprehensive immigration reform. Nobody can identify what that means. I don't know what it means. I don't know what that means. A lot of different people have different definitions, but I think it's a quality of life issue. It becomes a health issue with people, and it's going to take some time to do that. What I would hear, well, there's nothing but undocumented and illegals living in colonias. Totally inaccurate. Totally inaccurate. A study and a statistics that I read a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, that something like 70 to 80% of everyone under the age of 18 were U.S. citizens living in colonias. So if we have 11 million, 12 million people supposedly that somebody says that we have in the United States, kind of funny, they can tell you there's 11 or 12 million people that are here illegally, but they can't tell you where they're at. I don't get that. But anyway, so I was a proponent of even though I wasn't in the legislature and I couldn't do that, but the message was sent, to the leadership, like we have to look at that and do something. They're not going to go away. They're only going to continue to grow.
What would you say to those who would argue if to improve the colonias, others would just crop up more and you would never be able to fix the issue, or if it needs any fixing?
Well, it comes down to local control. When colonias were established, there were really no rules to build in the rural areas. Now you've got a lot more regulations in place, whether it's for building permits, whether are they building in a flood-prone area, in a floodplain. There's a lot more rules in place now that hopefully should mitigate some of this growth. But I think you got to keep in mind that when these colonias were built, there was nothing illegal about them. Now, fast forward, in retrospect, it was a bad decision to make. But we have to, I think that I need to recognize, and we all need to recognize, is why colonias started. It was, acreage of land that was bought by developers. They sold lots on a contract for deed basis, $50 down, $50 a month, and that was the American dream for a lot of the immigrants, a lot of the Mexicans that were coming over, whether legally or illegally. That was their American dream, and to them, to us, having that American dream, if it was, they would rather live in a shanty on a piece of land that they can claim it's their own, versus being homeless and going to a homeless shelter. And I hate to bring this up, but I'm going to, because I would use this example when I would speak to other, to colleagues and to friends, and I don't mean to be disrespectful towards anyone, but it is what it is. I would ask them, the next time that you're driving anywhere in Austin, Texas, Dallas, whatever, and you stop at a street corner and you see people that are panhandlers that are asking for money, look around and see who they are, and then tell me, how many Hispanics do you see in that group? And they think, and they thought, and they said, we never do. Exactly. And the reason for that is because, we are a very, very, I get chills talking about that, because it's something that it's sad, but at the same time, it's it kind of lends to the Mexican culture, the pride of your own home, not asking for handouts, not being on the street begging for money. They'd rather wash a car, cut a lawn for $5 than be begging for money. I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I think the majority of people that are out on this, even here in Brownsville, go to a street corner and you don't see a Mexicano, you don't see an Hispanic person begging for money. It's others. It's other than Mexicans, and it's to me it just goes to the root of the pride. But that's why Colonias really got started. Okay, it was people trying to better themselves, being able to afford a piece of property that didn't have infrastructure. They were happy. They were used to living, in third world conditions. So this is really better. They had outdoor privies. They, no running water, no paved streets. But that was 50, 60 years ago. Things have changed. And Texas, I believe Texas is the best state to live in. And I would use this analogy and I would, no matter where I was, I would ask for people to raise their hands. And how many people believe that Texas is the best state to live in the United States? And everybody would raise their hands. Yeah. Then I say, well, how many people think that the United States is the best place to live in the world? And they would raise their hands. So I said, well, if you kind of take that down, then that means that we're living in the best place to live in the world. And everybody would applaud, and because I believe that. But at the same time, we have to maintain that. We do want to continue being the best place in the world. And we demonstrate it by investing. Our best resource is our people. That's our best resource. And we have a lot of fine people, and not so fine, but we have a lot of good people in this state, and I was fortunate enough to be able to meet a good chunk of them.
Now that you're running for a Cameron County judge, what is your platform?
I'm going to bring. Well, my platform is not going to change what it's always been. I mean, I'm the same person, other than I'm a little bit smarter in terms of I was able to visit the 142 cities, look at what makes them great, kind of seek out what our challenges are. But my platform is the same. I believe in well, let me tell you what I don't believe, and I don't believe that government is the job creator. A lot of elected officials will take pride and say, while I was someone mayor or county judge, we created all these jobs. Mm-hmm. I cringe when I hear that, okay? Because I don't create anything, okay? Government does not create a thing. It's the entrepreneurs. It's the small mom and pop stores. It's those people that are willing to invest their own money, but whether through their own or borrowing. But those are the job creators. What government does do, and I think what Cameron has done over the years, is create and maintain an environment that's conducive for job creation. And that is by investing in infrastructure, investing in people, making sure that our taxes remain low. So I don't have a magic wand or a magic formula. So I'm going to do because it is a team effort. And while the 8 years plus that I was there, I had a pretty good team, that worked with me. Some of those teammates are still there. And even though they're Democrats, they're good teammates, and I think they come to realize that public service is not a partisan issue. So I'm going to continue just doing what I did those 8 years. I'm going to look at the budget again, make sure that we're living within our means. When we have to raise taxes, then we have to raise them, and that's only after we've exhausted everything. But I will tell you that as county judge, I mean our tax rate went up. I want to say about half a penny per year for 8 years, which is really not unreasonable. We never had to dip into fund balance because I believe that's like your savings. That's your rainy day fund. And when you see what happened just recently with Hurricane Harvey, a lot of governments ran out of their rainy day fund. Some didn't have adequate rainy day funds. I think we need to have 90 days minimum in a rainy day fund. When I left, I believe we had 88 days worth of operations. When I got to be county judge, we had less than 30. So it went up almost 3 times, and that's where we need to be. So as far as a platform, I'm not going to promise, a chicken in every pot, and I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to continue doing what I believe is fiscally conservative, making sure that we do the best we can for our constituency and our county employees. One thing that I'm not going to do, and I haven't done, I don't believe, is single out certain departments within the county and give them raises while everybody else does not. I think either everybody gets one or nobody gets one. That's the way I believe it should be, and that's not what happened this past budget. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, I just think that I'm going to continue doing what I did for 8 years. It was successful, and I'm just going to kind of continue where I left off.
As Cameron County seems to have so much going, like SpaceX, the Italian company, SADA, and their plans for Foundry, the expansion of the port of Brownsville, the emphasis on recreation, health, wellness, natural tourism, a possible second causeway to South Padre Island. Are you excited about the county's future?
Well, I'm excited about the county's present. I think that we have a lot of potential, but I've heard that word for decades. The potential of the port, the potential of Brownsville, the potential of South Texas. We have a lot. Well, it's time to kind of cut the potential out and do it. And I think that we have had some initiatives that have been positive. I remember the West Rail relocation project had been on the books for a long, long time. It unfortunately, when I left is when they opened it, but all that work that took place was through the collaboration of many people, whether it was the Brownsville Regional Mobility Authority, the Cameron County Regional Mobility Authority, a lot of the players that were in place. The Causeway, obviously, that came to the forefront after we had the collapse of the Causeway, and that happened in 2001, maybe. And here we're sitting here 16 years later, and we're still no Causeway. So that's something that obviously I'm going to promote. Now, the advantage that I have is that there's very, very few people that I know of that has direct lines of communication to key people in key state agencies. I have cell phone numbers of chairmen of whether it's TxDOT, TCEQ, Water Development Board, personal member of the governor's chief of staff. One of the governor's 5 cell phones. So I bring to the table that line of communication that I think very few people have, and I'll be able to sit down with them and talk. So as I was secretary, I promoted not only Cameron, but I promoted the border quite a bit. I believed in investing in the border. Ann Richards, may she rest in peace, was the first governor that really paid attention to the border. And I remember her saying in a speech that, and you all have heard it before, she believed the border was the front door to the United States, not the back door. And so she was the first governor that really acknowledged the importance of the border. And then it was followed by Bush and Perry and now Abbott. But I think that we need to maintain strong ties with Mexico. The border wall is going to be an issue, that I believe it's wrong. I didn't support the first fence. I just think that we can utilize that investment a little bit better through either through drones, through satellites, through boots on the ground. It's not going to be a one size fits all. So I recommended to President Trump. He's president-elect. I was secretary. I recommended that he work with Mexico, not so much on a border between the United States and Mexico, but to look at working with Mexico to build a wall along Mexico's southern border. And no one thought of that. And I said, well, that's where everyone's coming in. They're not coming in. You don't have as many Mexicans coming in today as you did 10 years ago, 5 years ago. But you do have others. You have people from all over the world using Central America as a crossing point, and that's a 500-mile stretch versus a 2,200-mile stretch. I suggested that. I think there's a way to do it. I still think there's a way to do it. Whether they listen or not, that's something else.
Yes. As a county judge, would you, what would you do to help the Mexican shoppers and the tourists back to the valley?
I don't know if any public official can do anything directly for that. I think there's several reasons that people are not coming over. I think the strictness in allowing people to cross has been a factor, but we also have to recognize that our border Mexican communities are suffering a lot as well by not having the American tourist go over there to have dinner, to shop, because of the fear of what's going on their streets. Reynosa, Matamoros, Ciudad Juarez again. Probably the only little community that I know of where people are going to on a regular basis is Nuevo Progreso. And everybody else is hesitant, to go over there. Not because they're that something's going on every day. They don't want to be caught at the wrong place at the wrong time. Really, I don't know if there's anything that a county judge can do. I mean, you can exchange flowers and you can exchange hands across the bridge and you can do all these, charo days and all that, and that's all fine. But once those 5 days are over, then it goes back to what it was. We just need to continue the dialogue, working with the Mexican leadership. I did have a meeting with the mayor, the new mayor of Matamoros, when he first became mayor, and what I suggested that they do. I mean, law enforcement is a big deal. So I think that it's a two-way street. They need to make their streets safer. But what is it that we can do? I mean, how are we going to attract that? These are federal issues. These are federal initiatives that need to be addressed, and not so much from the local perspective.
Where do you stand on the possible merger of the Valley's 3 metropolitan planning organizations?
I support the merger with a couple of caveats. When I was Secretary of State, I came home with the chairman of TxDOT, Chairman Lewis, and we visited we had a meeting with some of the mayors about it, and there was a lot of discussion. And I see the apprehension from, let's say, Brownsville and Harlingen. They're afraid of losing. But let me put it this way: if the 3 MPOs, which is Brownsville, Harlingen, San Benito, and Hidalgo County, we are very, very small fish in a very, very large pond, and a lot of these monies are competitive. They're discretionary. And when you're playing behind the top 4 or 5, and I'm speaking about Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, El Paso, those are the big boys. And we're sitting here trying Brownsville to do their own thing, or Harlingen to do their own thing, Hidalgo trying to do their own thing. We are not up at the top. We don't have a seat at the table. And I was speaking to somebody yesterday, and we're not at the table. We're sitting in the chairs along the back. That's where we're at. The other 5 are at this main table. I believe that we will get on that table if we merge, but there's got to be a guarantee, and I think I had that guarantee that neither MPO would receive less than what they're getting right now. No, that would be the floor, and anything on top of that would be gravy. That's what I wanted to do, and I think that's an agreement we can do. I know that there's some discussion about the voting issue, and then how much power and this and that. We have to recognize and realize that Hidalgo County is the big boy in South Texas. I mean, that's the realism of it. Their population is more than twice that Cameron is. Their tax bases are more. They've got more infrastructure. They're just it's like comparing us to Willacy County. You cannot. But I think we can employ some mechanisms in the agreement that make it equitable and make it fair. When we were divvying up money for Hurricane Dolly, and it was J.D. Salinas, the county judge, and myself, Yeah, they wanted to do it on a per capita basis. I said, well, you're gonna eat our lunch. So we sat down and we spoke and we talked, we negotiated, and we worked out a deal that was acceptable to both. We got more than we should, based on the per capita basis, but it's about working together. And I'm fortunate that whomever wins the county judge in Hidalgo, I've known Eloy Polido when he was county judge, and Richard Cortez is a fellow CPA. So I look forward to that. The county judge from Willacy, again, he's running unopposed, a good friend. And so I believe that we just need to communicate and speak and just put our cards on the table and quit trying to be, so isolationist.
Right. Do you have a position on the liquefied natural gas,
LNG?
LNG?
No, I mean, I've heard the pros and the cons of both of them, and it shouldn't be either or. I think that there's a balance. I'm not familiar enough and looked at all the studies and the demographics of it. I know the Commissioner's Court passed recently on a 4-1. The county judge voted against it on the LNG on the abatement issue. That's a done deal, okay? Unless there's a way to renege on it, which I would not go in and renege on it, and face some kind of litigation. But we'll just wait and see. I really want to hear all sides to it before I commit to anything.
Where do you stand? Final question. I've asked you a lot of questions.
It's all right. We're
And
good.
you've been great at it. Final question. What are the main attributes the Valley has that you would amplify if you were marketing the region?
Well, let me tell you what we don't have. I think that what we don't have is developed, and I think we're starting to do that. I think robotics is going to be a big deal. I think training our young adults in the technical fields. I think TSTC is doing a great job. South Texas doing a great job. We need to continue expanding that. As I said a few minutes ago, our best resource is our people, and within that component, then our best resource locally has to be our workforce. We have to develop a strong workforce. Amazon is building these fulfillment centers, and I've had the opportunity to visit Amazon, the Toyota plant, where they bring in and they hire 6,000-7,000 people, 8,000 people. So as secretary, I asked, okay, Amazon, why aren't you coming to? I didn't say Cameron. I said, why aren't you coming to the border? Logistically, it makes sense because they do a lot of business in Mexico, and I'm hoping that one day that they do. And they said, the honest answer, we don't believe that you have the labor force that we need. Okay, can we hire 7,000 people like within a month? I don't know. I don't have that answer. But if that's what they're looking for, and keep in mind that the Amazon fulfillment centers are all robotized, if there is such a word. They're all robotized. It's all robotics. So that's a different level of education that we need to start implementing with our young. It's changing. I mean, the workforce is changing. And I hate to simplify it, but if you're having a problem with your remote control at the house, give it to a 6-year-old. They'll figure it out, okay? And I can tell you because my grandson has locked my phone many a times. I don't know how he does it, but he's not even 2 years old yet. He's managed to be able to take pictures. And so things are changing, and we need to be able to adapt to that change, or we're gonna fall behind.
Yes. Anything else you would like to say?
No, I think it's been comprehensive. I think it's been a thank you for the opportunity. And there's I could talk for hours basically because I'm so passionate about this area.
Yes, I see.
And this is something that wherever I traveled, I always opened up and closed my speeches, even though they didn't know. Sometimes they didn't understand what I was saying with either Buenos Dias or Que Dios los bendiga. And of course, when I was in certain arenas, they didn't know, and I'd have to translate. Okay, for you white people, I said good morning and God bless you, and that always went over pretty well. But no, we have a great community here, but I don't think we've reached the pinnacle of the potential that we have, and we're not going to if we don't elect the right people. And we don't elect people that have the passion whether it's in the education, whether it's in county, whether it's in municipal government, they have to have the passion to really want to serve and not self-promote, not self-enrich, and keeping in mind that we are public servants and we work for the people. And I know that's kind of corny, but that's the way it is. And I think we've lost sight of that in many arenas, unfortunately.
How can your voters and residents generally learn about your campaign? Where can they go to?
Well, I haven't really set anything up yet. Remember, my election is not till November, but I guarantee you this, you'll see me alone on street corners once again. That was a great initiative. I got a lot of one-finger howdies, but I got a lot of support. People would honk, and even to this day, I used to walk neighborhoods quite a bit when I ran for county commissioner, and even to this day, people remember that I knocked on their door. Obviously, the county is a big county, and even though I like block walkers, and I've had some do that, but it's not the same. The people want to see the candidate. They don't want to see a surrogate. They want to see you out there. That's why I've had so many people volunteer, say, hey, we want to go stand with you. I said, no, if you want to go stand somewhere, go somewhere else and stand with my sign, but I need to do this by myself, on my own, and just let the chips fall where they may. And so I'm gonna stand on some corners that I haven't stood for in the past, and just wait and see. I don't have I let my old car take me where it wants to go. Sometimes I kept thinking it was an alignment issue, but no, it just starts taking off on the frontage road on its own, and so there we go. So we just do that.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Rio Grande Guardian, thank you so much. Mari Regalado, guest promoter, La Mujer del Pueblo. Thank you.